To me, the circle of fifths is very much like the periodic table in chemistry or a chart of the elementary particles in physics. It's a gateway to understanding so much about music. It also explains, by the way, why there are 12 notes in a chromatic scale. So let's now delve some more into the science and maths of the circle of fifths.
A perfect fifth is the most constant or stable of intervals between two notes, other than when notes are in unison or an octave apart. It's also the interval between a pair of pitches with a frequency ratio of 3:2, which is the simplest ratio apart from 1:1, the unison, or 2:1, the octave. Suppose you have a string stretched between 2 points and you stop it 2/3 of the way along its length. The note you get when you play it is a fifth above the note made by the open string. Let's see how the circle of fifths comes about. We'll choose as our starting note C, because the scale of C major is the only major scale that doesn't have any sharps or flats, so on a piano it can be played just on the white notes. A fifth up from C brings us to G, because if C is first, then D is second, E is third, F's fourth, and G is fifth. Another way of thinking of this is that if C is the do or root note of the scale, then G is the so. If G is now taken as the root note, the fifth in the scale of G major is D. Another fifth up brings us to A, then to E, and so on. When we get to F sharp, we could continue up another fifth, which would bring us to C sharp. But the way the circle of fifths is normally drawn, we go back to the C and then start to move the other way in an anti-clockwise direction by going down a fourth. The reason for doing this takes us deeper into music theory than we need to go at this stage, but let's just say it keeps the key signatures simpler. Going down a fourth from a note is the same as coming up a fifth from a note that's an octave lower, so the effect is the same. By going down in fourths anti-clockwise, we eventually get halfway around the circle to meet up at the same point we got to in going up in fifths in the other direction. The note at the half-past position on the clock of musical notes can be called F sharp moving in one direction or G flat moving in the other. It's the same note with two different names, a so-called enharmonic note. Here's the complete circle with all the key signatures included for those familiar with musical notation. Now, as you know, a circle is a closed shape. You can travel all the way around it and come back to your starting point. And the circle of fifths, or the circle of fourths if you like, is a true circle with 12 points on it, representing the 12 distinct notes in the chromatic scale, the scale that includes all the sharps and flats as well as the natural notes, in other words all the black and white notes on the piano. The circle is closed because the system of tuning we use today, what's called equal temperament, guarantees that it's closed. A simpler and much older system of tuning that's based exclusively on fifths, known as the Pythagorean scale, fails to close the circle. In 3 other videos I talk about equal temperament, Pythagorean tuning, and the Pythagorean comma, and if you watch these you'll understand why in the system of Pythagorean tuning the circle of fifths becomes a spiral of fifths, and the effect of this spiraling is that you never quite get back to the note you started on, or one that's several octaves higher, after completing a trip through all the other notes of the scale in ascending fifths. Equal temperament ensures that the frequency ratio between any note and the next higher note is always the same, and that 12 successive ratios gets us back to a note that's exactly 1 octave higher than where we started. The circle of fifths is incredibly useful. With it you can quickly work out the key signature of any of the 24 major and minor keys. You can find the best options when modulating or changing from one key to another, and you can work out good chord progressions. I hope you found this useful. Leave any comments you have below, and I'll see you again very soon.